Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for Inspired Entrepreneurs Week. This speaker series is brought to you by MSU Denver's College of Business, Department of Management, and Center for Entrepreneurship. My name is Becky Prater, and I'm your host. I believe if we see what it looks like to be an inspired entrepreneur, we will more likely become one. And I think that's an important thing because there's a difference between people that do the thing they do and people that are passionate about doing the thing they do. So today we have Katie Ferrigno. She is a seasoned marketing leader with a passion for the power of creativity and has a talent for reimagining and finding innovative ways to shake up brand worlds in social media. She's both an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. Over the years, she's worked with brands like Neutrogena, Verizon Business, MasterCard, Ulta Beauty, and Dos Equis. There's a lot more to her story, but I want to save that for her to present kind of her process. So, I would like you, if you wouldn't mind, tell us about your business, how you got into it, what inspired you to start, share the whole journey.
Sounds like a plan. I'm going to pull up some slides because pictures are worth thousands of words, yes. And it's helpful to kind of see it all through. As Becky noted, I titled this Entrepreneurship to Entrepreneurship and Back Again because it's definitely been a little bit of both. So let me pop this over. I'm Katie Ferrigno. I right now am the head of social strategy at Annex 88 as a part of Havas, New York. I'm the founder of Social Metrics LLC, founded in 2020, which I continue to work on today. I was also the founder of Insight Social Media Consulting back in 2012 through 2019. We'll talk a bit about that. Also campus speaker. I am part of the campus speakers program with ANA's AEF. That's their educational foundation. Graduated from Johnson and Wales University in 2012 with a Bachelor of Science, Advertising and Marketing Communications. Actually started off in the entrepreneurship program, so quite full circle. We'll get back to that too. And if you missed a little early yap before we got on, I'm a chief mom officer, as I call it, to one very demanding direct report and another incoming with a start date of 6/9. Few of the brands I've worked on, you may have heard of them. These have been some of my favorites, and I've just learned quite a bit throughout. Sounds all shiny and very impressive. It wasn't always like that. So I got out of school in 2012. That was during a time where the unemployment rate was 8.2%.
Oh,
To put that in terms, today is about 4.4 when we know how not great the job market was. So to be getting out of school at that time was rough. So Insights was born, Insight Social Media Consulting. This came after a series of just interviewing and interviewing and interviewing to no avail. And my now husband, boyfriend at the time, said, "Well, you do the work anyway. Why don't you just start a business?" And I was like, "You're crazy. That's not my jam. That's very anti-me. No, no, no." I got enough, not at this time, emails. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to do this." I put all my stuff in a book, printed, which is hilarious for social media now, but I schlepped the streets of New York City. I'd find restaurants and say, "Hey, you have X number of followers. Here's what I do. I can help you." Several handfuls of no's later, I started to get some yeses and more yeses. And before I knew it, I was stewarding brands in the new modern era. Because if you remember anything about 2012, it was very nascent for brands and social. There was no playbook exactly. So I was there writing it on my own little business. And that was just enough. Oh, I think I got kicked out the screen sharing window. Give me a sec. But it was just enough for me to have enough experience to get into the space. Advertising was always a passion for me. And so I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And it was not easy to break in at that time. But let me pull my slides back up and I'll show you some examples. Here we go. Gotta love the tech on a Monday.
I know, right? Always a little bit of a challenge.
Always. Here we go. Alrighty. So at that point, I had shown enough that I was building my own content calendars. I was taking my own content, building reports, and it was just enough to get into my first role, which was in hospitality PR. I continued for the next 6 years throughout Havas and McCann and DDB, and Insights lived the whole period of time. But if you know anything about creating content for social, it's a lot of work. So as I started to climb the ladder, found my way to associate director level, I said, this is just getting to be a little bit much for me. I'm going to sunset my business. I'm going to make that conscious decision and focus on full time and get there. The challenging part about that, this was 2019, right before 2020. And you can assume where this is going. I ended up losing my job, which was rough because now I had the opposite problem from when I started. Now I was too senior to be hired during that period of time. Everyone was trying to cut budgets. I said, well, you know what? I've done it before. I'll do it again. And I opened Social Metrics LLC. This was 8.5 months after I had been out of work. And I said, well, I can't just sit here and wait to be hired. I need to figure something out. So I started Social Metrics to focus on the reporting side of the business. So other small businesses, what I had found through my time at Havas and McCann and DDB was that we had such salient insights and such great reporting that small business owners just weren't getting, which I thought was kind of unfair. So all this time it had been in the back of my mind. I would love to help support other small business owners like me. And Social Metrics was the opportunity to do that. Well, the universe being as it was, Ogilvy called me not 3 weeks later. And I said, all right, well, I guess we're doing both. And I did. Social Metrics kind of sat on the background, built it a little bit in the back while I went over to Ogilvy and started working there. I had my first daughter. And then now here we are in 2025. 5 years later, I'm working at back at Havas. This was kind of full circle for me as well. Still nurturing Social Metrics very lightly in the background, although the workload of today makes it a little bit challenging. But I wanted to show that to show like I think there were moments in here where I felt like less of an entrepreneur, which sounds crazy because I was still operating the business for very much of this timeline. But I found that I actually was able to take that entrepreneurial experience and act like that in my full-time role. So being that entrepreneur, leading, global businesses and teams that were international across 3 different time zones, and being the one that was able to run those businesses independently. So I wanted to share that story.
Now, what are Havas's brands? What do they do?
So these are all advertising agencies. It's purely agency the whole time. Bullfrog and Bum was the only one that was a little bit more food, hospitality specific. So I was working on brands like Wolfgang Puck, Park Hyatt, some of the chefs here in New York City. My time at Havas, McCann, DDB, Ogilvy, and now back again. This is all like big scale advertising. So right now I'm working on the JBL business by Harman. I work a little bit on Wyndham Hotels. The first time around was Dos Equis. All across this has been things like Ulta Beauty and Neutrogena, so quite big brands. And it would be funny to hear people say like, "Oh my gosh, this budget's so small," and I'm like, "I've worked on small business. I know what small budgets are." But okay. What that did for me though, I loved it. Kind of kept me really boots on the ground, right? Because it's easy to get lost in these really big, flashy campaigns with large budgets. But this always kept me sharp. So not only was I talking about what I was doing in the full-time work, I was actually practicing what I was preaching on the small scale on my side business. So it kind of kept me tethered both ways.
Wow, fantastic.
Been a busy few years.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Hey, so what have been your biggest challenges?
Oh man. Well, I'll say balancing the time. I always tell young entrepreneurs it's a love-hate relationship between nights and weekends, because that's a big time to get things done, especially if you're kind of dual hatting like I was during my full-time role. That was the only time that I had. So I had to make the best of it. But making sure that like you're not letting, the woes and the tiredness and all the things get in the way of that vision. So that was something really important for me to hold on to. Why did I start this in the first place, and how can I keep it going? Over time, it shifted from this is my source of income and I'm doing this because I need to make money. Social metrics actually, insights too, began to be something more important and meaningful to me because what those businesses did was allowed me to give opportunities to people who were just getting out of school or between roles and couldn't find jobs. So I got to kind of, I guess you talk about healing your younger self. I got to do that through business, giving opportunities to people, teaching them. And while it was only kind of fleeting internships here and there, nothing major, the things I would hear them say on the way out, being like, I learned so much from you, recommending to other people to get the internship to learn the same thing was just more meaningful than I ever could have expected.
Wow. So did you ever have any employees or did you just work with interns?
It was mostly interns. Yeah, I think one friend of mine got as close to being an employee as I could, but it was always such small scale. Insights was probably the biggest, where I had someone working probably part-time back when, because again, social media content creation is a lot heavier than just building reports. So I needed someone that could, yes, do the reports, but also take the content, schedule it, be able to maintain that brand vision. So I think Insights was the closest I got to employee status, but kept it small and slim, which was better for me on the tech side of things.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Hey, so when you're working with a brand, are you managing just their social or are you doing all the marketing for them, including like billboards and all that stuff? Tell us a little bit more about what you do for a brand.
Yeah, I think a little TLDR, long story short, a little bit of everything. And that's the beauty of having been in social for so long. Because at first it was just their social channels. But again, coming up at the time that I did in 2012, you had to think about the full scale. You had to think about, okay, I'm going to post this link. Someone's going to go follow it and make a reservation. What does the website show? Does it have the specials that we're referencing? So it kind of by nature had me thinking at a 360-degree, 30,000-foot view. And so that helped me when I got to roles like I did in Velocity with DDB, working on the Neutrogena business. I was already working and operating like a brand strategist, which at the time, those had been two very separate practices. And then, that gave me a little bit more opportunity to step into those pieces. And now I can consult on the full stretch of it because now social is how brands are interacting in the world. Social is how people are finding the brands and being along for the story. So my role has become even more elevated than it was before.
Whoa. Okay, so I know social media has changed so much. I remember taking a class about how to use Facebook to promote your business. When every single person in your community that followed you got to see every single post. And that was amazing. And you didn't have to pay for anything at the time, and it was like a really cool way to do it. But just when I started, everything shifted. So you've seen all kinds of stuff come and go and shift and change. So talk about that. Tell us a little bit more about that. And what are the challenges of that?
Yeah, oh man, I always joke and say I've seen too much at this point, which has been helpful because I look at this whole span of time and what's old is new again because that you're right, that was the way it used to be. Most of your followers were seeing your content. There wasn't an algorithm yet. It was very much if this person's engaging, they're going to keep seeing it or choicefully going to your page, you could hope. And what happened was back then, community was really important, engaging in the comments and responding to messages and sharing UGC. And then right around 2015, everything was pay to play. If you wanted to go and do something, you had to put a massive budget behind it. And so everybody forgot about organic for a while. They're like, well, it doesn't matter, leave it alone. But I was one of the few like fighting the fight and saying it's still important. Yes, if you're reaching people with paid, but think about the funnel of that. If they're interested, they get targeted with something they like and they go to your page and there's nothing, you've kind of just lost an opportunity to make a really good impression. So, all throughout this time, while no one else cared, some of us did and continued that organic story. And so now you're seeing in like 2022 and beyond, community became important again. Now I'm seeing there are community management directors. We're actually even shifting. I'm changing my team's titles from community manager to community engagement strategist because it is that important. They're the front lines of the brands. They're the ones engaging daily. And so I want the rest of the organization and beyond, clients too, to understand this is a really important piece. I say it all the time. There are 3 C's of social, and it's content, paid or organic, community, and creator. All of those things should be working in tandem to tell that brand story. And if it's not, you're missing opportunity for momentum. And so thankfully, we're finally in a space where that is catching on.
Whoa. So now how many different platforms do you guys work with when you do social for businesses these days?
Well, it's going to be your usual suspects. It's Instagram, TikTok, first and foremost. Those are the first two front runners. YouTube has been on a very interesting path over the last several years. It was like kind of social, but kind of not. Since they rolled out YouTube Shorts, a lot of folks are considering that kind of equal. I think more so from a format perspective, because again, remember, we're talking about, yes, decently sized budgets, but still everyone's asked to do more with less. And so, being able to take something that's already in a 9:16 format and place elsewhere on another channel is very appealing, very compelling to audiences, to clients, that is. And so that's been another big one. Facebook, we call often the necessary evil. It's just some clients, it's more important than others. Like right now, I'm working on a travel brand, and their target's around 45 to 55. You're naturally going to see a little bit more activity on Facebook than TikTok in that case. And then yeah, you've got your others that kind of come and go. The new shiny thing that everyone talks about for 2 weeks and then is gone. And then of course the Twitter side of things, which everyone is still kind of on the outs about. Again, when you're thinking about the dollars you're spending, and again, brands are getting more pressed every year to make sure that where you're spending is effective. So that's another big piece of this too. Where can we be the most effective with the least budget?
Mm-hmm. And this, it sounds like the same, the same message that you t give to the people you work with is kind of equivalent to what you would give a small business, right? The TikTok and Instagram, and depending on your community, it would be Facebook.
Yep, exactly. And it's scale, basically. It's the same principles, just applied with bigger budgets and bigger brands, bigger audiences typically. So same thing, just different scale.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so tell us about some, maybe if you want to not stop sharing your screen so we can actually see your face, that might be good. Unless you have more slides you want to share.
There are some we can reference them later.
Okay,
That's all
okay.
good.
Yeah, so I'm interested in finding out like where you consider yourself having pivoted. I mean, clearly when you shifted into starting your business again, starting your first business. But tell us about that even in your business, even in working in companies. Tell us about about that. We talk a lot about pivoting and about how it's part of it. It's not like you failed, not like something that failed, but you got information and said, "Oh, wait, this is what we need to do now." So tell us about some of those times in your career.
You mean every day?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
That's social. It's social. It's literally every day. And I say that to folks, you always catch me the way I'm presenting to say, to the best of my knowledge, the most recent that I know, I have to caveat myself because things could be changing while I'm in the meeting talking to you. So it's literally every day, just being on the pulse of it. It does get tiring because this has been 13 years. I always say it's like dog years. So what's 13 times 7? I'm not great at math. I'll let you do that. But it's been getting really good at pivoting all the time. And what that's taught me is to not get too married to any particular tactical idea
Hmm.
and be really kind of on the pulse of what's happening. I call it like surfing or skateboarding or kind of riding the wave. Like, oh, there's a bump in the road, move that way. Oh, there's something else happening here. We got to transition and think about that elsewhere. Sometimes it's a bigger problem where like you've already thought about this whole campaign and it was all hinged on this one tactical idea. And now that that one thing changed, the whole concept is gone. So now wasted hours, you can't post the content. How else can then we refigure? So it's almost redoing a campaign. But sometimes it's a little easier and to say, okay, now the client really loves YouTube Shorts. Great. We can take what we built for TikTok in the 9:16 format, place that over, problem solved. But it is very often daily. Another piece of this is, again, like you're not operating in a silo. I try to explain to clients wearing a sandwich board and yelling out RTBs is not going to do anything for anyone. Participate in the conversation, be a resident, be a citizen of the space that you're entering, because it's also about reading the room. That's a really important piece. So, like when things are going awry out in the world, like maybe we shouldn't be posting something that's asking for a fun, light, levity comment because it looks like we're falling on deaf ears, we're being tone deaf, we're not paying attention to what's happening. So, context is another really big important piece.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this happened to me actually too. I posted something about joy and happiness when there was like a shooting at a King Soopers in Boulder, and somebody just came down on me like, "You're so insensitive. You're a terrible person." I'm like, "Wait, what happened? What do I not know about?"
All it takes is once, and that'll teach you real quick.
Oh my gosh, right. So what is that? What's a good example of when you had to like pull something completely down and start over?
Ooh, a good one was again, it only takes like really the first like one time that you do something and it makes you extra sensitive. There was some sort of fire. I don't know when it was. I couldn't tell you what year because they all blend together at this point. But there were some tragic fires that were happening, and our post copy that day just so happened, it was planned 2 weeks prior, had nothing to do with the current day, something along the lines of like, oh, that's fire. And it was enough for us to be like, oh, that needs to come down immediately. Thankfully, you hope that you're as tight with your CMs and they're on it and like making sure that they're paying attention to every little thing, that they catch it before something truly bad happens. But just things could be taken out of context and viewed in a way that you don't intend for them.
Oh, right. Oh, I can see. You'd have to be really careful because a lot of what you do is actually posted quite a bit in advance. I mean, do you guys, you would probably have a management system that you load it in way in advance, and so it just then populates without you having to do it.
Uh, a bit of a balance. So I always recommend like, yes, you want to have your planned stuff that should be more evergreen and fun, but then sometimes having a reactive process. We take that quite seriously. And one of my brands that I'm leading now, where on the Monday we're looking for what's happening out in the world. Hey, here's a list of things that might work. And then we'll meet as a team, decide on the ones we want to develop, bring it to clients the next day. They pick, we develop, we're live by Thursday. So keeping up with the pulse of what's happening. That's how, like a trending format happens. And we want to jump on the train while the algorithm is pushing that video. So a little bit of both.
Oh my gosh. Really good example of that is there's like a sweater company. I'm not going to remember the name. Yes, I will, but it'll come in a sec. It was a sweater company, cashmere sweater company that would embroider things on the front of the sweater. And literally the post they put together was related to what was happening that very day. So somebody was watching and they were able to do this embroidery on the shirt and then find some celebrity to put it on that had that was a message for the day related to what was happening right then.
Mhm.
It was so a lingua franca is what it's called. And
Okay.
I don't know, I think they're in New York, but I was amazed at how they were able to respond so quickly to what was going on in the world.
I love to see that. Bratz is really good at that too. You're like, how did they even do that in that period of time? This thing just happened, and they're just so quick to it. And that's the stuff, like, balance again. Everything about, I'm going to say, I always caveat star, asterisk, balance, because some brands will take that and run with every trend. But there's magic in that, being so on it with the things that your audience is paying attention to, that it's like, cheeky wink nod. I get it. This brand gets me. We're on the same page. Again, never overdoing it because I always, want to make sure my words aren't used against me. Like, well, you said the trends. I'm like, yes, but not always.
Yes, exactly. Hey, you said something about RTB. What does that stand for?
That is a reason to believe,
Oh, okay.
usually a brand thing. So if they're making a statement like, this will make your day, I'm making it up, this horrible copywriting, nobody fire me. But to say, the reason to believe is because this is a really solid quality that we use, and this thing has been proven in scientific studies to do XYZ. So just RTBs, which again are important, but it's not always what you say, it's how you say it, right? So we try to explain that to brands too. Like you can go about it and say, buy this thing because blah. It's probably not going to be that effective. But if you can find a really creative way to talk about that RTB in content, that's going to go over a lot better.
Hmm. Okay, now this putting me on the spot. Like, give us an example of that. Let's say there's something that has a lot of research behind it because it'll help you be a smarter person. What
Yeah.
how what would it look like to be kind of based on that research, and what would it look like to be the thing that people really need to hear?
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking back to a campaign for Neutrogena. We were launching a new product. Nobody had ever heard of it yet. There was a new active ingredient. And so we had to be thoughtful about how we broach this. So we actually treated it as a funnel approach and said, well, at the awareness level, if you've never heard of this thing before, we can give you a little bit more of a general claim and say, this brightens skin in a week, making it up. I don't remember what it was. And then once they've seen something again, they've been exposed to it before, we can get a layer deeper and say, resurfaces skin tone within a week. And you can start getting a little bit more specific versus just like awareness content, someone talking about a glow up. You start to associate this thing, and then we get you closer to conversion. That's where you're seeing the really hard-hitting RTB. People saw greater looking skin in 5 days, whatever it was. So kind of like thinking about where you are in the funnel to match the RTB to that point.
Okay. Oh, good. W- I think in this class, in several classes, we talk about that marketing funnel, about the awareness and how you eventually get to the buy and then hopefully the recommendation or testimonial and all that kind of stuff. So, do you want to talk a little bit about more about that just while we're here?
Yeah, sure thing. So the funnel, you'll hear that forever. It has changed shapes many times. It is not linear. Again, me and my caveats. But it's essentially the idea that at the widest level, you're going for awareness, something the audience has never seen before, hasn't been exposed to, might not even be familiar with the brand. The funnel will be specific to either the brand familiarity, a product familiarity, a new service, whatever type of business that you are. But the widest is awareness. That's when you see broadcast TV, now connected TV, the Super Bowl, for example, big scale. We're trying to reach people en masse. You can see that in smaller scale as well. There are awareness buys on social where I need to reach as many eyeballs as possible. You need to know my brand name. You need to know I've just launched this product. Awareness goes into consideration. Consideration is, okay, I'm familiar with this brand. Maybe I'll think about it. Consideration is going to hit a little bit closer to, all right, what is it about the brand that I want you to know? What about this product do I need you to know? And then that you might have a little bit more of the RTB presence in a thoughtful, choiceful way, of course. And then once you're through consideration, it's awareness, consideration, then you hope that you're kind of getting close to conversion. It's never that easy. It's a big loop now because you're getting targeted with God knows how many other things. But conversion, that's when you're ready to purchase. Like for me, that was Thrive Cosmetics. They targeted me for like 2 years. And I said, all right, fine, I'll cave, I'll buy it. I bought the thing. And now I love it. I use it all the time. So now I'm in the loyalty phase. Loyalty is more like, all right, we want to get recurring people, customers, clients, what have you, and maintain that relationship. That's often where organic social sits because that's more about relationship building, because you're trying to deepen that connection to the audience.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Okay, so now, when you were working with really small companies and really small budgets, how did that, like, what was that like for you? Because most of those small businesses think, I don't have money to do this, to put toward this. And yet, as the professional doing it, I mean, you would stay on or continue to be engaged only if the results made sense for the buyer. So, like like as a small business, you're reluctant to do that, and yet it's that leads to growth, and it should be ultimately worth the money you spent.
Yeah, that's a great point to talk about because that I've come across in several different iterations. It comes down to the right business owner with the right being in the right space of business, right? If you're just starting out, it's a little bit harder because you're already spending so much. You're investing to set up a website and trying to build a space if it's brick and mortar. You've already invested a lot and it gets really challenging. But I find that those folks are a little bit more understanding and will lean into organic social. They understand how important it is because they really don't have any other channels. They can't really put budget behind anything right now. So if they start with organic social, build a little bit of maybe a mood board, if you will, leverage their channels as that. Maybe they've got some budget for an influencer or two. They can start to get the word out paired with really good content. And then others who are just like, I'm ready to scale and I'm in the paid space. This is a point where I'm going to pull up my slides again because I've got a nice case study of this exactly. This is back from my Insights days, as you can see, my first business. This was Olio at Pew. If any of you are New York frequenters, this is at 6th Avenue in Greenwich, right across from the Jefferson Market Library. So quite a lot of foot traffic, very visible. And as you can see, he always had it very decorated and kind of beckoned you to stop in. I can't tell you how many times I walked by this place thinking, well, they already have 5,000 followers. This was back in 2012. That was a lot. Like they don't, what do they need with me? No, I just walk by, walk by, walk by. And then one day, particularly after a handful of no's, said, you know what? What's the worst thing you're going to tell me? No, I've heard it 75 times today. Let's do it again. And so I stopped into to Olio at Pew. So back then, they were a small restaurant with a very small paid advertising budget. He had one place here. because he had found some success in his location in Macedonia and said, I want to come to New York. I'm going to take the same concept and build it here. In 2012, it was about 5K, steadily growing. In 2013, they had about nine. So just Facebook only. They weren't live on any other channels because they weren't really active yet. Instagram wasn't a thing exactly for brands. But the thing was, it was a gorgeous space. The food was phenomenal, living in a really thriving space. They had everything that it takes to be a local hotspot. They just lacked a voice and visibility in the social space. So this is where I tried my hand at food photography, and copywriting and CMing and all the things as a social media manager will do. You're doing all of the jobs. But what that did was started to build a relationship with the audience. You understood the depth and the legacy and the quality going into the brand. You got to see it all the time in this gorgeous space. You got to learn about the chef and why they were building and making the things they did. We told you about the fire, wood burning fire stove and how it was built by a fourth generation Napolitan family. You just got a feel for the space. And what would happen was people would come visit, even if they were tourists and not regular customers, they would come back every time because they're like, oh, I loved that. You connected with me. You sent me a message. You engaged with me on social. And they would come back whenever they were back in town. So what that did over time was just really catapulted the business. So think about 2014, organic Facebook reach was compromised by the algorithm. That became a thing, and the necessity of paid media. Instagram started to kind of gain popularity around 2015. We capitalized on that. We took Olio to the attention of the local customers. And over the several years that span, we just catapulted, cascaded for years. And again, like I think his paid budget was maybe like, I don't know, he was spending a couple thousand every couple of months. It was not a big budget whatsoever, but just enough to get that awareness level. And then you'd get pulled in when by engaging with us on social, seeing these really beautiful pieces of content, and then adding influencers down the road. They've just continued to skyrocket. I checked today, the latest was, I think, 66,000 followers. He's got locations in DC, in Washington, Miami now. He expanded into other brands as well. If you've ever been to the city, Boucherie is another new one. For me, there was a really big full circle to see this one restaurant and all of the locations that it birthed thereafter, one of which being Le Grand Boucherie, which is in Midtown. And it hit me when I was watching the reboot of Sex and the City. And just like that, one of the characters sits down to lunch with her daughter, and it's in Boucherie, Le Grand Boucherie Midtown. And for me, it was like, wow, what a full circle to have been part of that journey and to see where they are today. It's been really awesome.
Wow, that must be really super satisfying. Hey, now tell us about like influencers and that story, because I know that there's lots of levels of influencers and it helps small businesses to tap into, I want to say lesser influencers or affordable influencers or a certain level that are affordable and yet also have an impact.
Yeah, so there's, oh my gosh, the scale is massive now. So typically, when we're talking about funnels again, I'll use kind of a pyramid visual. I didn't have one pulled together for today, but what we talk about is like, okay, look at it as a pyramid. On your top are those like macro celebrity talent. That's, big Super Bowl dollars. You've got then macro. Macro is kind of like an in between, quite big, but not as big. You've got your mid tier, which are still quite engaging and highly reached. You start to get into micro and nano. Nano is kind of like the local influencers that a brand like this would work on. Like this person's known for taking really excellent like food in the air pictures. That was one of their account specialties, and we'd partner with them and say, hey, we'll pay you X fee, you get free dinner, of course, and just write whatever you want, say whatever you will. So on the restaurant scale, it's a little bit easier. You're asking people to talk about food. Who doesn't love that? But yeah, there's a big scale there. What I see is the trade-off sometimes. So again, like thinking about the awareness to consideration funnel, it's really important to think about what level you're going to pull in, because again, if you're a big brand and you're launching a new product or doing something new, you're probably going to want to reach more of like a macro. If you're doing a challenge of some kind and you want them to engage, that's going to be heavier up there. Of course, paired with what you're asking them to do. Are they appearing somewhere? Are they developing content? If so, how many pieces and where are they posting it? Because, you're thinking about the syndication time that it takes for them. They're going to cross-post that to TikTok. They're editing their own videos. Plus, many folks now have teams and managers everybody's got to get paid. That all stacks up. And then when you're thinking about more of the like consideration performance play, I need someone to purchase something. I might pick more of a macro or a nano because they're a little bit more deeply engaged. People see them more as like real person engaging in real life. I might trust their perspective a little bit more than a macro who's getting paid to do everything that they're doing right now. I mean, get your bag, do the thing, but not always as helpful with driving conversion.
Okay, so who would be like, who would be, we know those people that would be at the top, but who would be some of those middle ground people? Like specific examples of who might be a mid-range influencer.
To think we just did a project last week and we were talking to, I would probably put mid-tier as, oh, who is it? And it's hard because like everybody's FYP page is different. I think Tinks is probably somewhere between a macro and a mid. She's a podcaster now, so she's kind of graduated past just the influencer phase. So she's probably at that level. Mid tier might be like trying to think of a scale. That's the hard part exactly, like because you're looking at who in this set knows this person, who would they be influential to? Because someone that I see regularly might not land as well for you, and vice versa. So it's really about being choiceful and using the tools like Creator IQ or Meltwater Clear to see is there a match in this audience that I'm targeting? Because if I'm selling this really nice sweatshirt, for example, and it's really high quality, very popular among, millennial women. But I'm actually picking an influencer who's more relevant to elder millennials and Gen X, I might not be making the best investment because that might not resonate with them as deeply as someone else in that cohort.
Okay, so you said Creator IQ, that's a place you go to match with influencers?
It's a tool that you use. So Creator IQ, it's a subscription model type thing. You can kind of go in and type in, I'm looking for someone that talks about financial wellness, whatever, making it up. And they'll give you a recommendation of people, or you find someone that's really cool on social. Let me look them up and cross-reference their page. It'll give you their engagement rate. It'll show you a little bit about their audience, what they're known for, any brand safety caveats, if you should be aware of those. Some of them, like Meltwater Clear, will give you an influence score based on an aggregate total of their engagement, their reach, and their following. And then they'll give you like, hey, this person's like a 98. Wow, really resonant for our group. Let's go for it.
And what's that, Met Water Clear?
Meltwater Clear,
Oh,
yeah, with a
okay.
K. That's a really cool tool. I've
With
been
a
liking
K?
Clear, yeah, with a
Oh, how
K.
funny. Oh my God, I always think that's so
Well,
funny.
all the tools, they take their liberties in their spellings.
And that's another one that's kind of like a tool to help pick.
Yeah, yep. It's an offshoot of Meltwater. Meltwater is a listening tool. Pretty cool. A lot of really nice AI integrations there. You can search and ask, like, hey, in the last 12 months, has been anything popped up about this particular brand? It'll give you a rundown. Here's what spiked. Here's why. Just helps you get to an insight quicker. And the Meltwater Clear piece was built as an addition specifically for brands that are working with influencers and trying to seek them. In terms of like actually partnering, very few tools will actually go the full end-to-end length. There are a couple of tools that do, and God knows you pay for them, but there's very few that really show the whole end-to-end piece where you're talking contracting, negotiating, being able to have reporting in the same place. Not too many of those, so that still ends up being quite manual today.
Mhm.
Although I do expect that that will shift a lot in the future.
Now, you had said something about two things. FYP page. What is that?
That is your For You page, known mostly from TikTok, but can be attributed to the same way that the algorithm works on Instagram. It's basically a curtailed algorithm that understands what it is that you, as a person, like. What do you tend to click on? What do you dwell on? What do you share with people? And based on that data, on those signals that you're giving it, it'll serve you up content within that space. And if you're friends with someone and you often share stuff together, you'll start to get served similar content as well. So that's why I always say, to clients and my organization is that you can't only go by, well, I see this on my FYP because everybody's is different. So like what I see, what you see, what your friend sees, like they're all different variations, different flavors of what TikTok has to offer. And so you can kind of tell when people don't use TikTok a whole lot because they're like, oh, isn't that just dances? And you're like, no, it is much, much more than that. Spend some time and then let's talk again.
I know mine is I can't even get on because it's just so offensive. What's on there is so offensive because I've only done like two things on it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you got to train
soft.
it.
Yes, it starts, you have to train. Yes. And
And now you're seeing actually a lot of tools that let you curtail it. So it's a little less like on its own as before. You're seeing a lot of that in Instagram, even threads now. You can pick the communities, so to speak, that you want to be a part of. I want to deer. Actually, just last week, my team executed on the Dear Algo trend that was happening on threads. And it was like, Dear Algo, more custom sneakers, making it up. And you can actually compel it to serve you the types of content that you want to be seeing, which is pretty great.
how can you do that? Is that like on Facebook, on Instagram or whatever, or is it just on TikTok?
So TikTok is just rolling this out. Instagram's just rolling this out. Same for Threads. I think it's just becoming available for Facebook. Because for me, it's always like, okay, you see these in the headlines and like what is beta versus what's actually rolled out. So that's where my like hesitation. Again, you see me saying like, well, I don't really know which one is out because it could be changing while I'm in this room. Who knows? It could have been rolled out already. But I think what they're seeing is that, and this is important to keep in mind when you're thinking content too, the platform's MO is to get you to spend more time. So that's why, when you're linking offsite, that post might be a little bit less prioritized in the feed because they want to keep you in that environment. And so what they're finding is that, okay, in order to keep people, we need to keep giving them things that they're actually interested in. And us guessing and making assumptions can only take us so far. So asking and letting the audience by choice say, this is what I'm interested in, is a much better opportunity to keep them within platform.
Okay. Wow. That is so interesting. Hey, okay, and then the other thing you mentioned is something about brand warnings or some kind of brand warning about influencers. What do you need to know? I would imagine that there would have to be, like, if this person swears on a regular basis, or, if they're, tell us about that. How does that, because I wouldn't imagine somebody would write that themselves. It's almost like somebody would have to have put that in, like, I don't know, something about their inappropriateness for certain brands.
Yeah, I'm curious about the way they build the tool. That part I don't have visibility into, but Meltwater Clear will give you kind of like a little, you'll see a little yellow sign that says brand safety check because, what's not brand safe for a finance brand is going to be very different from what's not brand safe from an audio brand, say, like a music and club DJ brand. And so it'll give you a caveat to say, hey, this could be something you might want to look into. And it's things like often curses or has, projects with, adult brands, or alcohol brands. They've done a partnership with this particular thing. They'll flag those kinds of things generally. I have to imagine it's an algorithm as well, that it's built that way. It's not like one person manually reporting. Um, but again, nothing like the human eye be able to say, actually, that's not too much of an issue, or it is. Right now, it'll flag political, and like that's a really challenging space right now because what is and what isn't is very subjective. And so that's something that'll just, I always say, like, yes, use the technology, but use it with a human perspective as well, because there's no better way to understand that and dig into it.
Whoa, oh my gosh, that's so cool. All right, so what do you see is next for you? Like, do you see yourself staying in this? And is there a particular position you're looking to get, or do you want to develop your own business? Or tell us what is next for you.
That is a million-dollar question, one that I'm in the midst of thinking about now. I think what I can confidently say is that I have spent 13 very wonderful years in social, which has been really great to get me where I am today. Like I said, I'm able to speak to brand strategy. I'm able to think like a CMO who's really embedded in every piece of the business, not just the marketing. I've run my own businesses, so I have that extra piece. I think there are a few different ways, and that's a beautiful thing about coming from this background of social. It opens up so many things for you. I see people go into behavioral analysis. I see people go into, actually, I really like the production side of things. It gives you so much. I think for me, I really like the idea of leading a business top to bottom. I've led teams, like I said, internationally. I've led brand and social strategy teams, which is great, but it's still within the marketing function. I quite like the idea of being able to see the full funnel more in the CMO head of marketing role. That to me feels quite compelling. Again, not from a power perspective, but just to be able to push the levers, try the things collectively and see where that brings the brand. I study a lot of like what's happening in the space, like Corey Marcusotto, one of my idols in the space. I look at CMOs that are doing really interesting things, giving their teams permissions, and that really speaks to me. But then there's the other side of the thing where I love the freedom that comes with entrepreneurship. I like that I can choose the projects that I want to work on. A little bit less stability, depending on the type of business you're in or what phase of that business that you're in. I also really still love education, and I probably will find myself in some collegiate educational space, maybe a blend of all the three, to be honest with you. So, world's my oyster. I've got some mat leave coming up time to think about when I'm not up in the middle of the night with the baby, thinking about what's next because there's just so many ways to spin it.
Wow. So did you say you actually do some lecturing at one of the universities right now?
I do, yeah. Usually a myriad of them. Sometimes I do them independently, like these, with just the connections I have made with professors across the nation, sometimes internationally. But yeah, I'm a part of AEF's campus speaker program, and there's a selection of schools that work with them regularly, and they'll be looking for, hey, we need someone with social expertise. Are you free? Are you interested? I try to make time for those whenever I can. Of course, the higher up the ladder I've gone, the more packed my schedule is, the more challenging that's been. So I love the opportunity to do these. So thank you for having me today, because I love this. I like the idea that I started and I came out and was like, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. This is terrifying. But I find there's a relief that comes in telling this story to people who are coming out of school to say, all right, there is a path forward for me, even if one is not completely there and illuminated. I can show that can task myself with things. I'm autonomous and I can still get myself there. And that's quite meaningful.
That's so good. Okay, so what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs looking to start a business?
Let's see. So, first, I will say keep your head in the mindset of developing case studies. That will help you every time
Hmm.
because it's one thing to talk about the work that you're doing. And yes, that tells you that you've got passion and you love to hear about someone talking about the work they love. But being able to put that in a case study on a chart, speak to numbers, that's the thing that often pushes things over the bench. So be mindful about how you set it up, even in the way that you set up the business. I'm thinking about what I did here too, and I'll share a slide for this as well. My business ended up being a case study on its own. So think about the masterclass that it is. Okay, I'm thinking marketing. I got to position my brand. I need to build social content. I need to think about an acquisition strategy. How do I reach people? But then you're also web design and you're dealing with the hosting side of things. I need to think about a CRM rate and my email marketing. How am I reaching people? Do I have paid social happening? How am I pitching this business? Managing a tech stack, managing a P&L and taxes, super fun, but also contracting and negotiation. So being able to show this, like, look what I did, like that's a really, really powerful thing, especially if you're pitching to investors, if you're finding yourself in some sort of fundraising cycle, being able to show that A, you've got the wherewithal, the expertise, you're organized, you're thoughtful. That's going to speak a lot more than the passion. The person that's just, I really love what I do. That's great. That's maybe 40% of it. The rest of it has to be those tactical, tangible skills that you then use. Because what that's done for me is that fired up this pipeline for me, leading these independent accounts and businesses. I was not at the same level as people at my level at work. You couldn't pair me with a director and say they have the same experience because I had more. And so that's what led me to leading international teams across time zones, across global business, and now leading an agency practice. So again, like keeping in mind what that looks like, even if you're in that full-time spot. So I always say, it's not, you're not less of an entrepreneur for not doing those things, but thinking about the grit and the discipline, the resilience that it takes to get that title, and then the broader application of those skills. So long-winded, but very important.
Appreciate that. So when you're talking about case study mindset, you're saying, like, let's just say you're going to start a business. So a case study might look like you do start with somebody, and then you have data based on that project that you worked on, and that becomes its case study. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So like being able to show something like this over that span of time. Even in short term, when I was working on Verizon, we wanted to show right out of the gate, hey, for the first month, this is the number that we were already able to hit. 6 months in, here's what we looked like at the end of the year. Being able to provide those milestones and say it doesn't take a full year every time you can show progress in whatever that means to the brand or yourself or your business, to show that like you're able to come in and make a difference. And here's how. Here's what that looks like in the numbers.
Okay, that's the great. It's a great idea. And I think sometimes we can, not that you'd have to do that, but I see that when people are trying to build a portfolio, they might have to do it for half price or maybe free. So I know my son is building his tattoo business. He's an extremely talented tattoo artist, but he didn't have all the foundational internship that he did and apprenticeship and all that. So he's having to start where he has to give some tattoos away for free so he can build this like case study or a portfolio of what his work looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about being choiceful when you do that because like you don't want to just give the services away to anyone, but like thinking thoughtfully, okay, this is a business that's on the upward trajectory. If I just do this project for even as a project base, like for example, when I had social metrics in the early phases, I had a contact from my prior agency role who was working on Eileen Fisher and I just need a couple of quarters of reporting. Okay, that's fine. Like that is something I ended up getting paid for it, but like that's the kind of thing that you want to be thinking about. This is going to look really good in a portfolio. I can make a really great case study out of this. We always say in my full time in advertising, it's like you've got brands for fame and you've got brands for fortune. Some pay the bills, and some are more like we're going to get a case study, an award out of this, which is great for the clients and us. So just thinking about what's important in that way. But again, like I think one piece of that, but just because there's so many scales, I'm thinking about all the different levels of entrepreneur you could be. In the case of a tattoo artist, okay, let me find a friend who has a sizable following. That to me is going to be something that's helpful because that person might post about it. More people will see it. That's great. In some cases, it could be a work trade. Hey, tattoo artist, you know someone who's a social media specialist. I've done work trades over the years. Hey, can you help me out and I'll give you this service? Sure, sure thing. So it's thinking about what does that reward look like? It's not always monetary. Sometimes it's more of a service.
Okay, one of the things you just said is something that I don't think he considered at all. The idea of if you're going to give this away for free, make sure you find somebody that has influence. So
Yep.
find somebody who's got a large following and offer it to them. It's a great idea. And I don't know that they thought of that. He probably would just open it up to everybody, but that doesn't necessarily get you anywhere. Like it could if it was intentional and saying, hey, here's 5 people that have influence. Do, and then say this, I'll offer this. If they take it, yes. Or no, I'll offer this person. And then kind of go down this set.
Exactly. I mean, the other piece of this, and you'll see this all the way up the chain and full-time, full above the line marketing too, moments, finding moments that make sense. Like for tattoos specifically, Friday the 13th, there's 2 of them in a row. We just passed one this Friday. We got another one coming up. Those end up being really big promotional moments because like you can get a flash tattoo for a fraction of the price than you normally would. But now you've made that connection with that tattoo artist. You've sat with them for an hour. You like them. You've built a rapport. So being able to take that moment use that momentum, and then, connect deeper after that.
Okay, I love that. I'm writing that one down. I love that idea.
I
Yes.
love it.
Oh my God, there's those happen. Oh my God, they happen all the time. You kind of said something, some of the wording you've been using makes me think that you're in the same little bit foot in the woo-woo world as I am. And when you think about like Mercury in retrograde just started today, or we're finally out of it, these kind of crazy things, you can throw a 10% discount for
Mhm.
something to, create some movement.
Yeah, it'll resonate with someone. That's what you got to think, like who in that audience, what mindsets can I be a part of? What kind of story am I telling about my brand and connecting accordingly?
That's fantastic. Okay, so tell me about something about your business that would surprise us.
Let me think about that. That's an excellent question. Something about my business that would surprise you. Well, I'll say insights, for example, because that was the longest standing. It was kind of unheard of for someone at my level at that time. I was just a social coordinator. I was like kind of entry level at that strategist level and learning a lot of like the official terms. I didn't know what a deck was. I was like, what? They were like, oh, like a slide deck, like a deck of cards. Oh, okay. I knew nothing. But at the same time, I was running a business on the side. Like the fact that I was doing that for all 6 of those years, that's why I say like that set me ahead of my competition internally because there was no social coordinator, there was no senior strategist, there was no director, associate director. Nobody was doing that. If they were, it was like a side hustle and I write for fun or I have like a food blog, which I do too. But no one was like actively running a full scale business on the side. And that just always put me in a different mindset. You could see that in my managers, and they were like, "You're really thinking about the business." Like I'm thinking about, okay, I'm writing a scope, and I'm thinking about the hours, and like I just that doesn't usually come so naturally to someone at that level. So, I guess that was a good surprise.
Oh, hey, one time, a few slides back, I saw you list something. It said managing a tech stack. You know how you talked about you don't know what a deck is. I don't know what a tech stack is. What does that mean?
A tech stack. So let me pull that slide back up because it's easier to reference. A tech stack is basically like all of the tools that you're using to do the work that you're doing. So
Okay.
for me, that was Google Workspace. I had myself and my intern. We both needed email addresses. Okay, now that's one piece of the tech stack. Sprout Social. I'm pulling metrics. I'm not doing all of that manually. Some, yes, because the tools will still not capture everything you needed to, and I'll die on that hill. But a Sprout Social or something like it to pull those numbers. Canva, because I was developing my own content. I needed a tool to be able to do that. I paid for Pro, 12 bucks a month. That's part of my tech stack. There's HubSpot. You see on this bottom right picture, sent to 47, delivered to 46. This was a whole CRM platform that I was using. So learning how to input those email addresses into Excel sheets, schedule when I was going to send those out. That's another part of that tech stack. Squarespace, that's where I hosted my website. You got to pay for that hosting every year. You got to maintain and make sure that that's up to date. Are you doing a splash page for a promotion? There's HelloSign. Okay, I've got an intern now. I need them to sign their 1099. I need them to sign the NDA. I'm going to send that to them that way. I put LinkedIn Premium here. I consider that part of my tech stack because for me, Premium is less like who's viewing my profile. Yes, maybe, but it's also about reaching and using their sales navigator tool to find who is, in the cohort that I'm looking for. Typically, for social metrics, for example, I'm looking for people who have creative teams. They already do their whole content piece. They might not have an analyst and they might just want to automate reports. So could be very small business all the way up to a mid-size. Like, I don't know, for example, we were looking at some hotel chains, just to automate that across the board. So a quick glance, I'm sure I'm missing some, but tech stack being all of the tools that you use to get the job done.
Okay, oh my gosh, so interesting. So funny that I don't even know. Well, you know how you use like three-letter acronyms for things? So I'm constantly asking what they are because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should know these things, but I don't. So I have to
This
give
is why I do this too. This is why I do speaking engagements because it reminds me not everyone is in the weeds of the stuff that I'm doing every day and very helpful for client perspective. So thank you. CRM is a customer retention model. It's your email marketing. So that's, you're gonna, sign them up for the first time and then you're sending promotional stuff regularly. What else I'm trying to think? I might have said ATL at one point. I mean, above the line marketing, that's anything that it's an old term now, but it used to be like TV broadcast, more connected TV space versus below the line, which is more like what is the line even? It's a negotiable thing these days, but below the line being like where you're more likely to convert, where you're closer to the actual bottom part of that funnel. So that's social, that's website, that's sales, that's promotional emails, things like that.
Nice. Okay, you had said something too about um, part of what you did was reporting. That was like part of your job. I mean, it makes sense. The social metrics and insights, all of that implies data. And so what if somebody hired you, what would they get? What would they get from you?
Yeah, so social metrics specifically is reporting. So made easy, you don't have to do anything with it because some folks will say, oh, well, you have something like a Sprout Social. You need a different layer to be able to use Sprout Social in a way that's useful. Because if you have never worked in this space, you don't know what the metrics mean. You're kind of just taking what they tell you at face value. Oh, this performed really great. Awesome. What do you do with that? And what does great mean? So I kind of help make it easier. I do an intake process with the clients, understand what's important to them. For example, a retail client might be more focused on people clicking on their catalog and putting things in their cart versus a restaurant. I want to get people to the restaurant. I want them to engage and share content back and forth. It's different per client and helping walk them through and then saying, okay, based on what you've said is important to your business, here are the metrics that I would look at in your social report. My team then compiles that data month over month, which is not something that other reporting places do. They'll give you only so much. But for example, Instagram stories, you're getting a fraction of the story. That's ironic because you're not telling you what people are sharing, what people are saving every time. Or did someone engage back on, you put a Q&A sticker, how many people engage with that? That's not being caught by something like a tool. So my team is part manual and we'll go in and dig for that. And then we keep that year over year. So then beyond the monthly reports, if you've got a snapshot or the quarterlies, you're able to look year over year at how that is changing over time. Hey, Christmas last year did really well. What if we try this? How did that reflect on the past year? So easy reports sent to your email, not another password to remember. It just makes it really super simple for folks that are I just need the numbers and I want to keep moving from here.
Love that. Okay, this is my last question. So recently I was at this event and we were supposed to tell people why, like what's unique about us that makes us much more capable of doing the thing we do. And I just thought that was the funnest question because I'd never thought about it, but I realized this is why I'm really good at what I do. And I'm wondering, what would you say about that? Like what you do, why are you best at it?
I love that question. That's a really good one, and one that I've thought about a lot over the years. I would say because I've had this entrepreneurial background, because I've paired that at the levels of advertising that I've gotten myself to, I have a very unique perspective on business. Because often you'll find someone in my role as head of strategy of social, they only know social. Maybe they've worked on a brand campaign here and there, but like it begins and ends with the content. Having done what I've done to the degree that I've done it, I'm able to really think about the business impact as much as what it's doing for the content and the audience and how that affects the brand over time. So, being a student of advertising, being able to practice this in my own entrepreneurial way has really just given me a 30,000 foot view in the whole marketing machine that you wouldn't typically have had one versus the other.
Wow, that's a great answer. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the beautiful things you've